Hey, this is Peter Richlick's personal philosophy leadership presentation. This is going to be my best shot. I've learned and confirmed throughout this course a lot about myself. I've learned that I'm a much more transformational leader than I once thought. I always saw myself in a lot more of a linear transactional fashion, kind of cut and dry, more like a business person, as I always prefer things to be kind of really straightforward, really simple, and very clear, very cut and dry. And as much as possible, I also believe in reciprocity, but I see now how much it goes beyond that. How much, the definition of transaction and the definition of transformation goes beyond that. And how my behaviors and choices in the past may have been about reciprocity, but they were never, not always transactional in nature. And yeah. They weren't always about, keeping score, keeping in line, but they were coming from a place to see and nurture growth, and coming from a place of desire to nurture and spur on evolution as well. So I feel like my motivations have always been there to help others grow, to help others realize their potential and realize what's in front of them. I feel like that I've always shown them what they're doing already towards that end when they don't feel like they're anywhere closer. That was always kind of my thing. That's what I got off on. I feel like that I come from a growth-oriented mindset always. I've always been curious. I've always been comfortable with a greater degree of risk. I've always tried to be honest, even when it sucked. And my friends used to say, Peter, we love that you see everything as a lesson. I'm always learning and trying to learn, and to know what's a strong part of leadership was really, really encouraging. Looking back on my life, I wonder if my parents knew that what it takes to make a great leader, because they certainly actively instilled the 7 qualities of great leadership as values to live by, as honesty, humility. Those are things that were always kind of expounded upon me. I also found so much insight and value in discovering the distinction between insight and advocacy. I found that I always assumed that because so many people practiced advocacy in the decision-making process, that it was the only real way groups ever came to decisions, and that someone always ended up feeling left out, feeling heard, feeling unheard, and that decisions was actually just tough, and it was always a fight to make a decision. Like, making a decision always meant conflict and creating conflict, and that decision making just sort of left people unheard, and people would fight for their beliefs while overlooking or downplaying evidence to the contrary. And so I assumed this was natural law, basically. And this carried forward in my life a lot when it came to just conflicts in relationships, when it just came to personal relationships, when it came to relationships with clientele, that kind of stuff. And so I was kind of blown away by that. I don't know how I've never ran into it. I feel like I've had glimpses of advocacy before in my life, but I've never really kind of had it explicit. Never really had a long streak of that, or just like lived and operated in that space. Yeah, I learned about how I work and take charge of my life, and how I tend to take too much on and am inconsistent with my output because I am continuously overwhelmed. So this put a spotlight on my own awareness, and I was surprised to learn this, sort of, but mostly relieved that I would finally admit to it. It also showed me how I can improve my integrity, and made me aware that I suffered from recent personal integrity account withdrawals, and that it's possible to change with integrity. I was actually fascinated by this concept, as I've been struggling with personal integrity and my identity as such, an integral person lately. So I always grew up to kind of see myself as someone who was a integral person, someone who always believed in keeping to his word, in doing what he says he was going to do. And this year has been very, very challenging for that. Has really come to light that that's actually not necessarily the case. Sorry, I'm just losing my words here. It's not necessarily the case. It's just, I don't know. It's like I face this resistance to doing some of the things I know I should do, and I think that's partly because I've taken on too much, and when I'm overwhelmed, sometimes I resist the things that I need to do because I feel like I don't have time for myself, or I just don't have time to collect and integrate what I just did, and then I'm moving on to the next thing, and it's been really, really difficult because I set myself up for big integrity withdrawals that way, and then I feel worse and worse about myself, so then I try harder and try to take on more and do more, but then I end up failing more and then actually going back on my word and not saying not doing the things I wanted to do and not saying the things I wanted to say, and be the person that I said I was going to be, and keep my commitments, and then it really affects me, and then I start beating myself up and getting a lower self-esteem, and then, I want to try harder and go further and do all this shit, and it's just a vicious repeating cycle, and that was huge. So that was a big impact, and I feel like integrity is a huge part of leadership and leadership philosophy. You can't have a leadership philosophy without integrity. At least your philosophy doesn't mean shit. It's just a nice idea. It's just like, yeah, whatever. But you need to be able to put it into action, your words. You need to be able to create a vision, but then go execute it. Then you need to be able to do the things you need to do to stay on the vision and share your vision. Then you need to be able to help people move through their own blocks in order to have your team do what you set out for them to do, and do what they set out for them to do as well too. So like, it really comes down to your level of integrity will determine your level of success as a leader. And that blew my mind, because I had felt like that was not clear to me all year, and I was wondering why I started seeing all these signs that, hey, your integrity is suffering. Why is it suffering? Why are you letting it slide? Blah, blah, blah. Like, why isn't it important to you? And it didn't click to me, the gravity of it. I would just keep trying harder and just brush off the failures, just brush it off. And I wouldn't really think about it and think about why they're happening. I would just, just keep trying. Just kind of bulldoze shit. That's what I do. But yeah, so that really changed me. So I feel like my philosophy to leadership is simple. If you want to be heard, first you have to hear. And if you want to change, you really do need to think, multidimensionally about your team, about the effects it's going to have on your life, the effects that it's going to have on your relationships, all those other things, and where you're at with your self-care, all these other details. And then, hold that space and see what your life would be like, and see, is it worth the risk? What would happen if I couldn't commit, if I couldn't make good on my commitments? What would happen if I could? And then, determine the risk level and then go for it, or not go for it. Maybe you realize, hey, my personal integrity account has kind of been taking a beating lately. I need to not take as much on, and I need to just own what I'm owning right now and do what I'm doing right now. And that's that. So yeah, it comes down to integrity is a key to creating open, communicative leadership based on a decision process that is inclusive and transformational, as opposed to confrontational and advocative. I hope that answers the question. I hope that fulfills this assignment. I'm not going to lie, I did struggle a little with comprehending the entire assignment somehow. But yeah. This is my assignment. Peter Rich, look out.